So the male, who's actually bigger at the moment, he lives in here. And I've mentioned before, shelves. It just gives your snakes so much more room, and if they're done right, a lot more security. Lots of stuff going on. Lots of hidey holes. Coir substrate so I can really soak it down. But yeah, a nice nook and cranny kind of site for a python to live in. Certainly a Superdwarf. Realistically, these things only come out at night, really. If you've got a good enclosure where there's plenty of warmth, they'll come out at night when it's dark, as you'd expect, really, especially from a small snake. The female, who is, yeah, half the size in mass, I think, we're going to pop her in here. Again, lots of nooks and crannies. Really good thermal gradients. So up here, you're looking about 31. But down here, down at the back there, 24, maybe 25, depending on the time of day. Look at this beautiful snake. So these are pure Kayuadi locality genetics. Really beautiful. I think a bit like a rainbow boa. The only trouble with a reticulated python, if you're not showing it off out in natural sunlight, you're missing out on so much of that amazing iridescence that a reticulated python possesses. Now I've got a 10-foot albino golden child, white albino, but it's a beautiful snake. But to me, I'm all about wild type snakes, and I think there's very few wild type snakes that show off the beauty of this is better than any morph factor than a reticulated python. And again, out in the sunshine, this really is just, what a beautiful snake. How ridiculous that just a common old mainland reticulated python hatched from an egg, pure natural colours, wouldn't have as much following as a fancy coloured or even just an albino one. For me, it's ludicrous, but each to their own. That's the beauty of keeping reptiles. There's something for everyone. These dwarf reticulated pythons, honestly guys, they are out of this world. Fascinating, interesting. And when I was a teenager, as a kid, and all the reticulated pythons I kept were caught from the wild, they lived up to their reputation. Unpredictable, pretty aggressive things, terrified of humans, big teeth, fast to bite. Not so now with these captive bred generations and generations. This would make a far more interesting and better pet than any royal python, and probably even things like corn snakes. It gets to a decent size, certainly a male, without getting silly, mind out. And they never mess about with food. They'll eat every time you put food in. They soon learn that food's food and your hand isn't. I can't rate dwarf reticulated pythons highly enough. Reticulated pythons, never thought I'd keep those again in my life. By chance I was given one. I said no twice and then said, oh, go on then. That was a golden child. That led me to get a pair of pure locality, naturalistic looking, well, natural type, wild type. Look at that. If you're thinking of getting a genuinely small subspecies of reticulated python, yeah, I think these are great. And also, you can put them in an enclosure that's really interesting. You won't see them until it's dark unless you get them out. But you can have a really lovely looking setup. It doesn't have to be just a square box on the floor with your snake tucked in, pretty much like my black-headed pythons are at the moment. You can still have a wonderful display snake. It's just that you'll enjoy it in the evening, not so much in the daytime, or you can get a little bit of that iridescence. Look at that. Let's get her in a new enclosure. And they will use all the height of a tall enclosure. They don't need it. Perfectly fine in a low enclosure, just like the ledge inside a cave or something. But they certainly will climb. A snake that spends all day doing nothing, and you kind of think, oh, does it need a lot of room? You go out and look at your reticulated pythons after dark via your phone torchlight, and you'll find out very, very active semi-arboreal species indeed. Such a lovely shape, python, as long as they're not overfed and bloated. A python for sure, for the colubrid enthusiast, someone that likes a kind of snaky shaped snake. I think we'll just leave her to it. We're just going to get bored looking at her back, aren't we? She'll go and explore lots of hiding places. She can decide whether she wants to sit somewhere warm or somewhere cooler. That's part of what it's all about.